What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Recently we gave you a video with 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6 where I got to do one of my favorite activities, just slip into my imagination and talk about what I want to see in the next Elder Scrolls title. I was considering making a part 2 and I've got to admit it was definitely your comments which made me commit to it, particularly the comment with 418 thumbs up at the time of writing this by the Lion Sin of Predecessors. Apparently when I asked you if you wanted a part 2, I stumbled into a trap and I'll be in mortal danger if I don't make a series out of this. So listening to the subscribers and also not wanting to die, I bring you in no order 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6 Part 2. Let us know if you want a Part 3 and so on. So desire number 1 in this video is what I would call unique ways of completing quests. But what do I mean by this? Well, in Part 1 of this series, I talked a lot about factions and I gave you some examples of how it would be cool to take factions in different directions based on your decisions during quests. It's kind of similar, but what I mean for this desire is basically introducing more sandboxy elements so the player can actually think, oh, can I do this? And then it turns out that you actually can. So think of it in terms of playstyles and how certain side quests will pigeonhole you into playing the game a certain way. In many Elder Scrolls side quests, you're given an objective to complete, and there's usually just one way of completing it, and that's the same for every single playthrough. Not always, but most of the time. Imagine if you get a side quest and you need to kill someone to recover a family amulet from their corpse. Now, if you are playing a pacifist thief-like character, you're probably going to still have to kill them somehow, whether you use frenzy to get an enemy to kill them, or just make them eat a poisoned apple, or whatever you do. But what would be cooler would be if you could actually use your thief skills and pickpocket the amulet from them without them knowing, bringing it back to the quest giver and completing the quest that way. Or if you could use the speech skill to convince them to just give you the amulet or buy it from them for cheap without killing them. Or wait until they sleep and store the amulet in a locker next to their bed and lockpick that locker open and take it. You get the idea here. Systems that reward player ingenuity should be encouraged. And there should be ways of completing quests that you never know about unless you simply try it, because the quest objective only still points you to the main way of doing things. However, there would still be other ways that the quest could be done. Think of how in Deus Ex there's a few ways of completing a mission, and it feels really cool when you figure out something unique, something that wasn't obvious. Like imagine in the Civil War storyline if you could take the Ulfric Stormcloak dossier from the Thalmor embassy and show it to Ralof, and with 100 speech skill you could confront Ulfric together about it, and by presenting the conspiracy with such persuasion you convince him to push for a peaceful resolution with the Empire, to somehow work things out so that the Thalmor don't benefit from him destabilizing the Empire anymore. You get the idea. Or imagine in the Lights Out side quest you get from Jari Ra in Solitude, if you could actually just go and report him to the Imperial Guards and have them send out a squad ready to ambush and intercept the criminals who are aiming to ambush the ship. The other things would be making better environmental pathing options during side quests, like if you could think, I wonder if I could climb across those tree branches over there and get past this enemy unseen, and then do it. Or approach a boss from the other side of a mountain and not be stopped by invisible walls. In Skyrim, we saw some ability to play with the pathing during quests through the use of some doors requiring lockpicking, which led you to take a different and usually more efficient path. An enhanced version of this for sneaky characters to really take you off the path and through some other cool back way would be dope. In a nutshell, let's reward creative players with interesting quest choices and also physical paths, which may not be where the map marker is showing you to go, nor what the objective is telling you to do. Pretty much just add unspecified methods of completing things in greater quantity. But now for desire number 2, increased weapon diversity. In Skyrim we had bows, crossbows, and then 3 types of one-handed and 3 types of two-handed weapons, plus daggers and staves too. Now this amount of diversity wasn't awful, but hey, it's time to step things up a notch because we've been going backwards in weapon diversity as the Elder Scrolls games have progressed. In Morrowind we had extras like clubs, spears, halberds, throwing stars, and so on. There were darts, broadswords, short swords, longbows, and short bows, just a lot of variety in terms of weapon type, and then variety within the category. In Oblivion we had less variety, but there were still things like short swords and long swords. I really loved the silver short sword, and always wanted to wield it on some character that was like the ranger in the Warhammer Mark of Chaos trailer from 2006. But anyways, in Elder Scrolls 6, let's add in some more weapon diversity. Keep crossbows in from the start, not just add them in DLC, and let's get those polearms going, like spears and halberds. There could be one-handed and two-handed variants too. Imagine some sort of elven hoplite build, a massive high elf tank with a shield in one hand and a spear in the other. I'm talking throwing spears too, of course. Even Fallout New Vegas had throwing spears, so it could easily be done on whatever technology is going to be used for Elder Scrolls 6. In Morrowind, throwing weapons were under the marksman skill, and it included things like darts, throwing knives, and throwing stars. Now, whether throwing weapons are governed under a marksman skill that also dictates archery isn't really my focus point here. I just want to see them added back. Bethesda can make it work in a skill tree one way or another. All we have to do is take a page out of Morrowind's book here. Think sabers, claymores, tantos, wakizashis, and all the rest of it. Then many of these weapon variants would come in different metal types. So you could have Daedric katanas, ebony spears, glass throwing darts, and elven halberds. Pretty awesome stuff, and it's a perfect way for more customizable characters and far more varied playstyle possibilities. Besides more difference within the weapon types, and then applying that to the various metal types available, it would also be cool if there were some culturally specific types. For example, imagine a Daedric scimitar if Elder Scrolls 6 was set in Hammerfell, or if it was set in High Rock and you could have the exact same thing, and the scimitar is this rare, unique treasure that was brought over from a Hammerfell warrior who went exploring in High Rock long ago. You could also have one or two variants for cultural weapons if the game was set in either or both of these locations. So imagine you can find a steel sword in Hammerfell, which is thicker and maybe very slightly curved towards the end, not a scimitar, just slightly curved. Then in High Rock, you can find something called a Breton steel sword, which would look much more regal, like the fine steel sword in Oblivion. We can't have cultural variants of everything for every race, it's just too hard to do, but we can obviously have some of them scattered about here and there where it makes sense. Now let's get electric with a huge desire. Number 3, Elder Scrolls 6 needs an expanded magic system, and at that, one that allows for spell making. So what do I mean by an expanded magic system? Do we need to add in new schools of magic, or old ones that were removed as the Elder Scrolls games progressed? Well, not really. In Oblivion, we had mysticism as a magic school, which had things in it like telekinesis and reflect physical and magical damage, and in Daggerfall and Morrowind, we even had thaumaturgy as a spell school, which had spells like levitate and water walking. Anyways, when it comes to magic, the first thing to realize is that all the schools are just arbitrary classifications anyway, so it doesn't really matter lore-wise if we add back in a bunch of spells that weren't in Skyrim but were in previous games, yet still keep all the same spell schools of destruction, conjuration, illusion, restoration, and alteration. In fact, I would even suggest that limiting spells to these school categories or skills is a better idea because it stops mage characters from having to spend their perk points too thinly. For example, if we added back mysticism and thaumaturgy, then all you're really doing is making the characters who want to learn a large variety of spells expend even more perk points than other builds simply to unlock the same spells they could have had access to anyway, were they just slotted into one of the 5 spell skills used in Skyrim. Anyway, so we're keeping the skill categories the same. At least that's what I would like, but what do we do with the actual spells? Well, there's far too much to cover in this video alone, but more or less, we need to rapidly expand the variety of spells available in each spell school. It's really not that hard, and while streamlining can be beneficial, I think this is one area where we need to actually add some more complexity back into. Definitely watch our video called The Ideal Elder Scrolls 6 Magic System if you want a massive amount of detail on the following ideas. For the Destruction School, let's add in options for mages who want to be very offensive without necessarily using the 3 elements from Skyrim, Frost, Shock, and Fire. Let's have poison spells come back where you can surround yourself with fields of acid or shoot streams of bile-like substances at your enemies. Let's bring back absorb spells like that featured on enchanted weapons, where we can absorb health and stamina from enemies using our hands, playing as a kind of leech mage. There's many sensational things you can do with non-elemental destruction spells, but as far as the elements are concerned, let's keep them there and just add more variety. Keep everything that's already there, but what we can do is take the Dragon Shout effects and add them in as master spells, or something like that. We're assuming we're not the Dragonborn in Elder Scrolls 6, so you could take shouts like Storm Call and Ice Form and turn them into destruction spells. Storm Call could just be more concentrated to a smaller area, and maybe you could even aim aim it in a circular area on the ground and drag it where you want, with lightning hailing down from the sky into the circle, killing everyone. A weaker version of Ice Form could also be used, where you hit enemies close to you and they freeze, while ones further away just take a bit of frost damage. Touch spells could also be added back in for a variety of spell schools. These basically allowed you to palm your enemies with a spell type. They had higher potency at the cost of range, so you could have a frost touch-based spell that does loads of damage and has a 25% chance of freezing the target. For conjuration, let's add back in bound weapons of all types and a full set of bound armor. Now remember, if we're adding way more weapon diversity, that's going to be even more bound weapons too, like bound halberds or bound short swords. Let's add variety to the amount of things you can summon, allowing for many different options regardless of what your skill level is, not just 3 Atronachs and a few other things. Things like zombies, scamps, weak skeletons, and weak Atronachs early on, and then later you can have Zavalis, Hungers, Dremora mages, and wraiths, and all the other cool stuff we saw in previous games. Even just having multiple ranks of one summon type, such as skeletons, and then skeleton champions when your conjuration's higher, which had better gear, playstyles, and stats, was really cool and added more depth. So we should bring that back, but actually make the higher ranking summons of the same type different. Necromancy was also a lot of fun in Skyrim, but even then we should have perks that allow true masters with high magicka to have up to 4 summons at a time. New conjuration spells could also be dope, expanding on previously existing things like Banish and Soul Trap. Imagine an area Soul Trap spell, that would be pretty wacky, or a mark and recall type spell that allows you to travel to custom markers in previously visited areas via Oblivion portals. For illusion, let's get unique spells like Silence back. I loved this spell. This basically allowed you to stop an enemy from casting spells, and as a projectile it traveled kind of slow, so it wasn't too overpowered. It really destroyed mage capabilities though, so we'd want to make it not last too long, maybe 10 seconds or so, or more depending on how much magicka it takes from you to cast. Chameleon was another interesting spell, which allowed you to do actions without breaking the invisibility it gave you, the drawback being that you were only semi-invisible, so technically if you were bad at stealth you could be seen. Think of it more as a stealth enhancer. As I said once before, you look like an enemy in Halo that's using a cloak, you can still see them. Obviously keep muffle and invisibility and all the pacify, frenzy, fear, and rally spells, but then add more variants. For example, have an apprentice invisibility spell that only lasts for 8 seconds and is used for very tight stealth situations. Have all types of illusion spells come at all skill levels, and bring things back like command humanoid and command creature if possible. Then think of the kind of cool spells added in mods like Apocalypse Magic. We should be able to use things like a disguise spell, making us look like a target for a limited period of time, meaning that if you get too close to them they will realize, but if you stay away and walk near their allies, who are normally enemies to you, you'll get through without hostility. A spell like Ghost Walk would be really cool, where you turn invisible and then after you break invisibility you teleport back to where the spell was first cast. Great for assassins who want to slit a throat and then disappear. I don't want to ramble too long on spell possibilities, so quickly to go over restoration and alteration, I'll say this. For alteration, keep what's there, but for Talos' sake, add in way more miscellaneous spells, like water walking, low to mid-tier unlock spells, a slow spell, and expand on blood magic. One example I've used before would be a link spell, where whatever damage you take, the target also takes, so when they attack you they get hurt, but if one of their bandit archer friends shoots you in the back, then they're also going to take damage. Alteration should just be filled with extreme amounts of variety, while still keeping the basic foundations like flesh spells. Resistance spells would also be cool though, just like a general resistance to fire or shock spell and so on. For restoration, we want to keep all the cool stuff that already existed, but again just add way more variety. Add more holy spells like Stendarr's Aura, and fix up wards by making them actually worth using. Also throw in spells that cure diseases and cancel out poison effects. One spell in Oblivion I remember was Dispel, and that could be used to cancel many magical effects that had a duration applied on you. Like I've suggested in the past, a regrow ingredient spell would be dope. Cast it on a harvested alchemical ingredient to grow it back. This would only be able to be used once per harvested ingredient though. Final topic on improving magic before I move on to the next desire is spell making. In previous Elder Scrolls games, you could mix effects together to create entirely new spells of your own, modifying the duration, area of effect, and magnitude. You could stack effects together to make some really fruity spells, but obviously the costs, both in coin and in magicka, weren't feasible if you tried to make some god tier spells. God mode became pretty fun though. Bethesda just has to balance a spell making system and also make enchanting less overpowered, otherwise we'll be able to reduce our casting costs by 100% still and just cast any crazy thing. Fun, but really unbalanced. But yeah, let's add in custom spell making for accomplished mages so we can make a spell that paralyzes our targets while setting them on fire for the duration of the paralysis. Why not? So number 3 was a big one, but number 4 is a lot simpler. Desire number 4 for Elder Scrolls 6 is to have a massively expanded character customization system. Full body stuff, not just changing a weight slider to have bigger muscles. There should be body tattoos, many more hairstyles, piercings specific to each body type. For example, if you just want to pierce one ear or on the top of your ear or one part of your lip or eyebrow. And there should also be the ability to be fat if you want or lean, just like in Fallout 4, but done with more options. You should also be able to change your height, but still within the lore parameters set for your race. For example, if you max out the height slider on a wood elf, it won't be as tall as a tall high elf still. This leads to a bunch of really diverse characters that you can make for your own personal build. But more than this, it also provides for a lot more interesting NPCs in the world you're interacting with. Think about it. You can have characters like a really fat Khajiit salesman or skooma lord, or a really particularly short high elf, always known as the runt of his family, who actually makes an excellent thief. Again, it's within ranges though, so the high elf wouldn't be short compared to other races, but you get the idea. Really muscular, lean Redguard warriors would stand out as physically different to, say, a really muscular but also a bit fat Nord sailor. Lots and lots of different face paint options would be great too, and we could even have faces like in Fallout 4 where you can drag and move parts as you desire. So yeah, full body and face customization, sliders for everything you can think of, yes, even for those. I did say number 4 would be short, and now we've arrived at desire number 5. This is a pet peeve of mine that I want fixed, and longtime fans would know all about it. Let's get some seriously proper, unique weapons and armor pieces in the Elder Scrolls 6. You would have heard us critique the legendary weapon and armor system of Fallout 4, but if you look closely, Skyrim did something pretty similar with enchanted weapons. It worked way better than legendary weapons in the Fallout universe did, but even still, let's just add some touches to weapons to make them actually unique. For example, there were plenty of items with unique names that were just ordinary or even randomized. Take the Axe of Whiterun, for example. You kill a bloody dragon for Jarl Bolgraf and become the Thane, and he rewards you with a special axe. However, all of its properties are randomized. Depending on your level, the metal type changes. It can be a war axe or a battle axe, and it'll have some random enchantment on it. Instead of this, it really wouldn't have been hard for Bethesda to just put the crest of Whiterun on it and change the pattern design slightly and just keep it as one certain metal type. Another perfect example, while they have different enchantments, would be the Pale Blade and the Galder Black Blade looking identical. They're both ancient Nord swords. Another example would be Wind Shear. This scimitar had an extremely unique effect, so good on Bethesda for that one, but it did just look like every other scimitar. There were many times weapons that could have been made unique aesthetically simply weren't. Do keep in mind that simply uniquely named weapons don't always have to be truly unique though. Like if you were in a dungeon and you found a standard steel dagger called Alessandro's dagger and it just had a shock damage enchantment, that would be fine because it's insignificant. But even still, with these unimportant ones, you could really just draw some spirals on it or slightly change the grip color and it would be somewhat unique. You get what I'm saying? It really isn't hard to fix. Actual weapon examples from Skyrim that was simply nothing changed at all include Amren's family sword, which is just an iron sword, and Rondi's dagger, which is just a steel dagger. But the main thing we need to fix for Elder Scrolls 6 are the uniques of significance. A really high quantity of unique weapons and armor would be perfect. And also, let's have some really unique enchantments that are A, actually useful, and B, more powerful or simply more unique than anything you can create yourself. A perfect example of this can be found when we look at Daedric weapons. You have the Warhammer Volendrong, which looks really cool, but simply has an absorb stamina enchantment. It's a pretty potent enchantment, but the problem here is that it's not a unique effect. Imagine if Volendrong also made enemies stagger 50% more often, in addition to absorbing the stamina. Now we're talking. Another example would be the Mace of Molag Bal. Aesthetically, it is perfectly unique, but its effects are that it soul traps a target if they die within 3 seconds, and it deals 25 damage to stamina and magicka. I could get a Daedric Mace, smith it up, and put 2 enchantments on it myself that are similar if not more useful, and it would have been better. It's still unique in the fact that it soul traps and damages stamina and damages magicka, but you can just really create something that has more utility. It might not look as cool, but that's not the point here. A weapon from a Daedric Prince should look really awesome and have an effect that's really awesome. It doesn't even have to be too overpowered. Off the top of my head, imagine if it slowed enemy movement by 20% or something as well. Not stacking, of course. Just little touches like that separate it from other weapons utility-wise and make it stand out. When you look at the Daedric artifact Spellbreaker, that's actually a good example of unique, because besides looking awesome, it's unique in the sense that it's a shield that generates a ward. You won't see that effect anywhere else, and you can't make it. Now, I know I've listed off all of these weapon examples, but the same thing goes for armor, and to be honest, even for jewelry. Let's just really spice up Elder Scrolls 6 by taking the opportunity to make every unique actually unique where possible, if not at least aesthetically different, instead of giving a normal weapon like an iron sword a unique name. And that wraps up part 2 of our series of 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6. Thank you all so much for watching this video and for receiving the previous one so well and suggesting that we make it a series. We all really appreciate your support, and we love all the feedback we get on Elder Scrolls 6 ideas in the comments section below. If you want to tell us ideas on social media or just see what we're yapping on about, we've got links down in the description. Thanks again for enjoying our passion as much as we do. We're super grateful. Subscribe for more. My name's Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.